Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It is once again time for your favorite list podcast 10, 2, 1. For the last episode of the year, I am one of your hosts, Josh, joined, as always, by the other hostess with the mostest, Jen.
Hey, I don't know how you're feeling about the end of the year, but I am kind of feeling good about the end of this year. Like different than I usually feel about the end of the year, which is either, oh my God, could we just get this over with? Or, oh, I'm so excited to have a new year. I kind of I kind of don't feel either of those things. I kind of feel like, yeah, this is pretty good. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess 2022 wasn't as bad as I mean, I guess it wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. So,
It hasn't been the train wreck that the previous couple of years have been. 2020, I guess, is when the wreck started. 2021 is when the engine exploded, and here
right.
we are, 2022. It's like, okay, the fire simmered down now, and we're pulling bodies from the wreckage. It's still gruesome, but you know what? We've been through worse, so let's just move on to the next one and get these tracks opened up.
Also, my gold standard is was it as bad as 2016? And so far, nothing has held a candle even close to 2016. So I feel okay. We've had some celebrity deaths, we've had some cancellations of shows in entertainment. There's been some things that haven't been great, but overall, um, it's been a pretty good year. Yeah, not perfect, but a pretty good year. I can't say I'm complaining.
I will say the thing that surprised me about 2022 is the fact that we had a lot of great movies come out this year.
Yeah, amazingly, because when you consider how long it actually takes a movie to get from shooting to and in production to post production, and when you realize that a lot of that was over the COVID cycle, um, it is quite interesting that we have what we have now. And also, I just have to give a shout out to this movie wise. Avatar, The Way of Water, reached the 1 billion mark or something like that. I mean, like an insane amount of money worldwide um, for a movie that basically a lot of people in the industry brushed off and said, nope, it probably won't even make its production budget back. And yeah, I think I don't I don't want to superimpose my own expectations of what's going to happen for theatrical releases. Um but this feels like a really good omen for what might be to come. I don't know, what do you think?
My apathy for Avatar is complete. I don't wish it failure. After all, each dollar is a dollar for Disney. Um, but as far as how I feel personally about that, I don't have feelings. I get called
well,
out a lot for that because they're
well,
like,
I
"Oh,
didn't.
you're a hater." No,
No, and don't get me wrong, because I'm actually not asking you to weigh in on whether you think Avatar was good. I actually was trying to say that I think this bodes well for theatrical releases to come because listen, I have heard a lot of sharp criticism by people saying, okay, well, the age of theatrical release is now over. We had COVID, it rearranged how we are viewing our content with so much more demand for streaming and VOD. And I feel like no matter how you feel about Avatar, I feel like the results of 950 million worldwide, so almost a billion, um, is a really good omen for theater releases. That is all movies coming after. Obviously, they're not going to hit this mark, but it is very conscientiously to me kind of I guess I'm just trying to say, like, it seems like there are still some good times to come for theatrical releases, and movies can continue to sort of branch out and do some pretty big things because they can expect big returns. That was all I was trying to say. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you think that I was asking you to weigh in on Avatar.
Well, if you put it like that, I can say that for the box office this year has been, it's been good. Avatar business, speaking business wise, cracked the top 10 of the highest grossing movies of the year. Um, it's still got, a ways to go before it catches up to the top five. But, what I'm thinking the takeaway from all of this is people going, okay, we're going to release a movie. And then I'll say between 15 and 30 years, we'll release a sequel,
Yeah,
because that's where the big ticket items were this year, right? It was Avatar and Top Gun were
right.
just they're the ones that kind of cruised in there out of nowhere. And well, I guess we've been talking about Avatar for 2 or 3 years now, because it was supposed to release what, in 2019, 2020, something like that,
Yeah, yeah. It was
but
actually,
it
I think
just
it was
kept
actually
getting
supposed to be.
delayed.
Yep, I think it was actually supposed to be 2018.
So yeah, and while it might have been on the minds of a lot of people, it finally got released. And of course, time will tell if it has the legs to help it crack the top five of the highest grossing movies of the year. Top Gun has that slot right now. I think Black Panther is behind that. But if there's if there's anybody that knows how to bring people to the theater, it's Disney and all of its subsidiaries.
Definitely, definitely. But I also think that, as we're talking about what we are most excited for in 2023, especially since we are basically talking mostly about theatrical releases. I mean, I think a lot of this is, and the way to make top dollar is still questionably uh getting bandied about, like, is it straight VOD, is it, franchise to streaming services with a small theatrical release, or is it wide theatrical release and then, going back to the same old business model with, the wide release, and then you go to HBO Max or whatever your streaming service is. And I think the answer is someplace comfortably leaning more toward, okay, audiences are ready to go back to the theater. And that is a marked change from even mid 2022, because we didn't see a lot of movies make a lot of money over 2022. But I just feel like we have reached yet another tipping point where, look, if you're going to release something, yeah, you might as well, because there really is a good chance that the audiences are ready to come back to the theater, which is different from where we were before.
I think the audience just demand that you give them something to watch.
Yeah, but I have to say that, I know that audience behaviors, I don't know about in Florida, because I know you guys are a little bit different in terms of attitudes, but there are still many places, especially on the West Coast, where people are like, I don't know if it's not just, is the risk worth it? It's, my behaviors around movie going have changed. And you see maybe less movies because you don't want to risk getting sick as much or whatever. But I'm saying that I think that toward the end of this year, behaviors have really changed a lot, in the fact that people are no longer giving that as much weight as they were even at the beginning of this year. And so it kind of breaks through, because, then you can get more, basically, butts in seats, so that more people are willing to see your movie. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting from a psychological perspective, but it's also it bodes well, I think, for big movie production, because without the wide theatrical releases and without the ability to sort of like get it out worldwide, it does hamper quite a bit the budgets that I think people are asking for going forward. So there's some good stuff in here, I think, toward the end of the year for us to be thinking about going into 2023. Does that make? I think that makes sense.
It does make sense. Um, yeah, it absolutely makes sense, especially what we've seen. You know, the bigger the spectacle, you know, more people are going to be willing to come out. But at the same time, that's also a gamble. So
Yes. Yes. And that I think is why 2022 is such a bellwether for what may happen in 2023. Although at this point, based on what we know is coming in 2023, the die is pretty much cast. But what gets greenlit in 2023, moving into our subsequent years, that really could be affected even now by what happened this year. So yeah, so I mean, like I said, 2022 wasn't, I don't think it was a bad year. I think we've seen the resurgence of some different entertainment processes. You know who the big loser in 2022 was, entertainment wise?
who?
Streaming services.
Oh yeah.
Streaming services are a mess right now. And until they reorganize and figure out their own inner machinations, however they're going to merge, however they're going to, take control of their own intellectual property or sell it out into licensing bits or whatever, we're going to continue to see streaming services really fall by the wayside in a heavy way because there just are there's too many of them, and there's not enough demand for individual content that they can provide. You have to have a bigger catalog. And if you look at HBO Max, I mean, well, we can talk about this on TV dinners, but even HBO Max is struggling heavily under the weight of its own catalog because it has to pay franchising fees, because it has to pay for the intellectual property that it has assigned to its titles. And even that is proving to be too costly for the companies. So there's, something needs to give, and I suspect that we as the consumers are not going to come out on top in this. It's going to be a bumpy ride for 2023 for streaming services.
Well, I look forward to seeing everything that's going to be hitting streaming and theaters. Maybe not watching all of it, but at least seeing what's coming.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. And even if you don't see it in 2023, it'll make good 2024 viewing. So who knows? You could find something good.
I was just looking at well, I guess it's the domestic box office. Maybe I should go to the worldwide. Worldwide box office for worldwide, Avatar has moved to number 2 for the year. Domestically, it's number 8. But
And it's only been out for what, 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks,
something like that.
So that's pretty. I would say that's pretty good. What's number 1?
Top Gun Maverick.
Oh, of course.
With just shy of 1.5 billion.
That's incredible. I mean, that really is incredible.
The interesting thing is, and I'm sorry for all of you listening out there that aren't nerding out like us over numbers, but it would seem Avatar's take is almost entirely dependent on the foreign market. 70% of its take comes from the foreign market, whereas Top Gun had an almost 50-50 split between the U.S. and everybody else.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I can see why that happens, and especially with the content matter, or the subject that is Top Gun, because there's such a high nostalgia for Top Gun, that I think it makes it feel different. But there's a lot of interest and excitement for Avatar that's different. It's a different audience. It's a totally different audience breakdown, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to see the rumbles between the two fan groups.
It's kind of exciting, actually. Yeah. Also, that I think that's the other thing. The other thing is we definitely have different uh, demographics interested in Avatar than in Top Gun. That's definitely for sure.
Well, I'm going to figure out how to segue this into what our lists are tonight.
So, enough talking about 2022. Let's talk about 2023.
The future. Now, it was, by the way, beautiful, beautiful segue. We talked about, our favorite movies of this past year, and not surprising, there were quite a few big titles on there. By the way, my 2022 list is now highly um, irrelevant because I drastically changed it over the weekend with certain viewings.
Oh,
But we're going to talk about the future 2023, the year where we're going to get so many movies. We're going to get a lot of highly anticipated movies. We're going to get huge sequels and franchises and blockbusters, and it's going to be an amazing year to go see a movie. But we're not talking about any of those. No, that would be too easy for us here at 1021. No, our lists are dedicated to the non-franchise players, the standalone films, or at least right now they're standalone films. Who knows how many sequels could come from the movies that we're about to talk about tonight? It's it's all about the non-sequel, the non-reliant on other movies. It's all about the standalone film. And we have each come up with 10 films that we are anticipating. I think it was a bit of a task. I'll be honest, because when I saw the slates, for the companies coming out, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, I'm so anticipating these, but they're all too big, I guess would be a way to put it. They're all too highly connected to other movies to
yeah.
to be eligible for the list. I'm not saying we're not anticipating some of these other movies, but just for the purposes of this list, we want to show all of the people out there that say they don't make original movies anymore. I mean, that's highly false, but we're going to prove it with evidence of these original films that are going to be released in 2023. I guess that's a very wordy way of saying these are our most anticipated films of 2023, non-franchise. There we go. I guess I didn't need 10 minutes to say all that, but here we are.
I don't think that there is a single Disney that is coming out in 2023 that isn't related in some way to a franchise. I mean, there are some, like remakes and things like that, but the remakes alone, they're connected to the franchise. So I couldn't choose them. And wow, it's yeah, you can really see that we are recycling intellectual property because all of these are, from Ant-Man to Little Mermaid to they are absolutely all connected to other franchises. There are very, very, very few um, independent of a franchise or other IP movies that are coming out. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. It's definitely going to be not the year of original movies. It is going to be the year of the sequel, the continuation, the remake, the connected story. It's definitely going to be one of those years.
Even I mean, I look at the Hunger Games and I'm like, but there are no more books. What are you doing? There are no more books.
Mm.
And Pixar, they're going to do their thing, so that's cool. But one of us should get started, and I went last week. So how about Jen? Get us started with your number 10 most anticipated and 23 film 10 pick?
Okay. Well, we did just immediately talk about Disney. So I'm going to start out with a Disney film, which is unique. And I don't know a ton about this because I haven't seen a lot of pre-press material about it. There is a teaser trailer, but it really is just super short. But Disney has a movie coming out from Pixar called Elemental. Elemental is, from what I understand, Elemental is an animated uh, romantic fantasy. And if you look at the trailer, it reminds me a lot of Osmosis Jones in the art direction and style, and I definitely kind of love that. I loved Osmosis Jones, so to have something that enters that art style is kind of cool. Apparently, it draws some inspiration, if you will, some overall composite material from a um from the 1970s in New York City. And specifically, it looks like it is going to be a story about kind of like a Romeo and Juliet story, but with some bigger cultural aspects around it. So it looks really interesting. I have high hopes always when I see a Disney Pixar movie headed out. And again, the art style actually makes me really happy. So Disney's Elemental in 2023. And actually, you know what? I don't even have a I actually don't even have a release date. I the closest that I could come was in June of 2023, but that's so far that's just the scheduled theatrical release. I don't actually have like a hard date, but I do know that they are marketing for June of 2023. So there you go.
Elementals. It almost made my list.
Yeah,
Almost.
I
But
love that art style. That art style really makes me happy. There's just something about it that is just so it's unique and fun. I really, really enjoy it.
you know what? Before I move on to mine, um, do you think we're gonna have much crossover tonight?
I think we'll actually have probably a lot of crossover.
Okay, okay. Then I think so as well. I know especially one, at least one that we will. But I won't say that until it gets there because it's probably going to be higher up on your list.
Okay.
My number 10 is I'm gotta figure out how to say this, so please bear with me. Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre. I probably just slaughtered that. Have you heard of this one?
I have not actually.
All right. Let me set the table here. Super spy Orson Fortune and his team of top operatives recruit Hollywood's biggest movie star, Danny Francesco, to help them on an undercover mission to stop billionaire arms broker Greg Simmons from selling a deadly new weapons technology that threatens to disrupt the world order. Now, why would this make it to my list? It seems like a pretty standard plot for, an action comedy, right? Well,
Yeah.
there there are a few names attached to this that really kind of perked my interest. One of them being the director and writer, Guy Ritchie.
Oh no.
I know, it can be
Oh no.
hit or miss with Guy Ritchie, but he seems to be doing, like I said, the writing and the directing. It's kind of reminds me of a Lock, Stock, or Snatch situation, um, where he's just kind of doing his thing. Jason Statham's on board, and seeing those two work together always makes me laugh. But also filling out the supporting cast: Aubrey Plaza, Josh Hartnett, that guy's back. Carrie Elwes, Hugh Grant, it's got some bona fides for a cast and to be what appears to be some sort of action comedy. I'm on board. I mean, I'm not making my number one movie on board, but this is definitely something I'll wind up checking out in the future. Here's the thing: it was supposed to be released this year, but due to certain situations that came out over the world, apparently the antagonists were Ukrainian gangsters.
Oh,
So after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, they looked at the film and were like, "Ooh, we might have to change some things." Nothing too heavy-handed like they did in the remake of Red Dawn, where they had to go in a post and like change every flag and and insignia and just completely change the invading country. But I imagine there will be some voiceover dialogue changes, things like that. And that got it pushed to 2023, which I'm looking forward to it. I honestly, Guy Ritchie's been kind of hit or miss since Snatch, right?
yeah. Looking at you, King Arthur.
But I think going back to this kind of sort of actiony comedy route with a story that he's in control of, I think that's the Guy Ritchie that we should be seeing. And after watching this movie, we'll know for sure.
Hmm.
And that's my number 10.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll look into that. I can't say I have lost faith with Guy Ritchie. I mean, I used to hold him in such high regard, and I don't know, everything
I've
just kind of
I've
fell apart.
I've let his first two movies, uh, you know, he's coasted a long ways based off those two movies. If I
Yeah,
saw honestly, I I've seen the trailers for some of the other stuff that he's done post Snatch, and if it's not something that just automatically grabs me, I didn't watch it.
yeah, yeah, and I don't know. He reminds me a lot of God. Please forgive me, everyone, for making this comparison. Please don't send me hate mail. Um, he reminds me a lot of the reputation that M. Night Shyamalan has, which is sometimes he makes amazing movies and woo, and then Hollywood is like, "Here, take my money." And then sometimes he makes absolutely ridiculous, over the top, idiotic films that don't stand up. And I don't like to say that. I wanted to love King Arthur. I really did. But it was just goofy, just absolutely goofy. But it's more than just the absolutely goofy King Arthur. There's been a lot of things in his portfolio lately that just make me like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it could be good. The guy's a genius. I mean, he's really brilliant. It's just whether he brings his A game to the film, I guess, is that sort of is where it kind of is. So we'll see. We'll see. Well, I can tell you that this next film will definitely be amazing and an A game film because it is Martin Scorsese. And I don't think very many people can downplay Martin Scorsese kind of in any fashion. Now this movie is supposed to be released in 2023, but it was also supposed to be released in, gosh, I don't know, 20 uh 2017, I think. 2018, 2017, 2018, something like that. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio. Apparently there's some back issues with what's going on here, but it is scheduled to be released this year sometime in the summer, June or July. And it's called Roosevelt. Um, Again, it's directed by Martin Scorsese. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio. Roosevelt is one of those presidents that, no matter how many stories you make, either adjacent to or about, it always kind of comes out with some good, interesting take. I am kind of excited about this one. One, because I haven't seen a lot of Martin Scorsese that can sort of capture the zeitgeist, and I really feel like we're sort of missing out on some of that. I mean, some of his stuff has been so niche lately. Um and I really want successive generations to see that Martin Scorsese is more than just a curmudgeon, that he's actually like a really excellent, awesome director. So, his conversations about the youth of this world is ruining movies. Yeah, okay, well, okay, but he is still an awesome movie director. So, uh, all about the 32nd president, Leonardo DiCaprio is always awesome. And the the president who navigated the Great Depression. I don't know if you can get sort of much grander that, and then World War II. I mean, there's a grand story. It seems like it's Martin Scorsese, perfect territory to tell. But again, I almost hesitate to say, oh yeah, it's definitely going to come out in 2023. That's what is scheduled. But if this movie's been on the back burner since 2017, 2018, man, it's been around for a while and it hasn't found its theatrical release yet. That's crazy. So that would be my number 9.
I'm not sure I knew this was even coming.
Yeah, crazy, right?
This is definitely right up my alley.
Yeah, historical, tells a grand sweeping story. Um and and again, the thing about Martin Scorsese is he tells a good story. He does tell a
Okay.
good story.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Gangs of New York is personally my favorite
oh yeah, that's a great
Scorsese flick,
story. Yep,
and
that's a
it's also
great.
teaming with Leo. So yeah, I approve of this pairing,
I think it's going to be good.
except for Shutter Island. Anyway, my number 9 is I'm gonna be honest. This one's gonna be brief because I don't know much about it, but it's coming out in 2023. It's called Theater Camp.
Hmm.
I was a theater kid in high school. Last couple years of high school anyway. I was a theater kid, so to see this movie coming out about theater kids at a theater camp, it it lit some lights for my old head here. I'm not sure that's a saying at all, but it really raised some interest for me. Why? Because one, it has one of my favorite actors, young actors of the time, Ben Platt.
Hmm.
Ben Platt is in it. Um, it well, here's the way it reads. I am stumbling all over myself tonight. The the eccentric
It's okay. It's
staff.
the end of the year. You're entitled. It's all right.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead.
I appreciate it, and I also had to remove some comments from the comments section. People trying to advertise their adult happy time stuff. Don't do that here. Anyway, directed by Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman, the eccentric staff of a rundown theater camp in upstate New York as they band together with the beloved founder's broy son to keep the camp afloat when she falls into a coma right before the summer session is set to begin.
Oh no.
So it's got people scrambling, counselors like, what do we do? And, I'm guessing they're going to put on a great show. And if Ben Platt sings, I am there all day, co-starring with him, Amy Sedaris. It's got it's got the cast that makes me want to watch. That is why I am anticipating this one. Plus my personal background in with the whole theater thing. So what can I say other than that?
It sounds
It's
like it could be good.
it's something that strikes a very personal chord. I think it's going to be funny, and like I said, if Ben Platt sings, I am there all day. Check out The Politician on
Nice.
Netflix. That's my number 9, Theater Camp.
Nice. All right. Well, my number 8 is a movie that sounds like a recipe for disaster, to be honest. Um and I think I'm mostly interested in it because I love this concept a lot, even though it's a ridiculous concept, but it's still super fun. It also stars Adam Driver, who always makes me happy. I love seeing Adam Driver. Sometimes to make fun of him, sometimes. I mean, no, I'm just kidding. I actually really like Adam Driver. Um, there's definitely something about his films that are memorable. They're always memorable. Okay, so there isn't a lot about this film, and I actually don't. I couldn't even find a good trailer for it. But it's still, but still, the concept sounds so good. It's called 65. It's a American science fiction thriller. It was written by Scott Beck and Brian Woods and stars Adam Driver and some other people who I guess Chloe Coleman is one of them. Okay, so it's set for theatrical release in the summer of 2023. Man, summer's going to be a busy time. And here's the premise: after a catastrophic crash on an unknown planet, pilot Millis quickly discovers he's actually stranded on Earth 65 million years ago. Now, with only one chance at rescue, and the only other survivor, Koa, must make their way across an unknown terrain ridden with dangerous prehistoric creatures, including dinosaurs, in an epic fight to survive. So, I mean, look, I was a kid who grew up on Land of the Lost, and I absolutely ate it up for breakfast. I just sort of love this concept. If you ever watched Planet of the Apes, I mean, like, there's just so many other tie-ins in science fiction about time traveling backwards in time and being thrust into what the Earth was before we quote unquote tamed it. Just a lot of interesting ideas here. So I'm kind of excited just because I want to see what they do with it. So again, it's called 65, referring to the 65 million years ago that they're actually heading back to. And it's supposed to be, actually, this one has an update of the production. uh production was in 2020, but this one has uh a release date which says it's possible that it could be released as early as April of 2023. So we'll see. I don't know. The other one said summer of 2023, so I don't know whether they've moved their release dates around or what's going on, but I'm sure we'll hear something about it soon.
65?
65, yes.
Okay.
Adam Driver, science fiction, 65 million years ago. I don't know. Sounds like it could be good. I feel like the music in this alone is probably going to be pretty awesome.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I
The
saw that.
music's by Danny Elfman. So I feel
Oh,
like I feel like it could be really good.
that's a game changer for me, I gotta be honest.
Right?
I mean,
I'm just
Adam
gonna go
Driver's
see it.
sci-fi driven action. Okay, that's fine. Music by Danny Elfman. I'm in.
Yeah, right.
I'm
It just
not
kind of
even being facetious.
it adds a whole different layer of kind of goodness to the experience, and especially because look, when you're in the theater and you're listening to a soundtrack, it's a lot different. Even if you have a home theater system, it's still a lot different when you have surround in the theater. There's just something about that experience which is really cool. So when you get a really great composer and then you put in that aspect of it, it becomes a whole experience by itself. So that's kind of exciting.
Very much so. Very much so. Um, you know, talking about our movies like this, and the way, especially we talked about Guy Ritchie a couple of selections ago, makes my number 8. I got to be honest, I'm a little hesitant to say it out loud because this is
Uh-oh.
one I am anticipating. It is it's a psychological horror, and I
Okay.
know that's something you are definitely into. But to be specific, I believe it says it rating it an apocalyptic psychological horror.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's checking a few boxes for me, and it has check out the cast: Dave Bautista. Like,
Oh.
okay, okay. Ben Aldridge, right?
Yeah.
Rupert Grint,
Okay.
Ron
Ron.
Weasley is going to be in it, and Jonathan Groff.
Wow.
What movie has all of these wonderful people? I love Jonathan Groff. I can't not sing, you know, the King's parts of Hamilton when I hear his name. But the movie is called Knock at the Cabin.
Oh, that is on my list, by the way.
Really? Okay,
Yeah, and
so
you know
our
what?
first crossover.
I wasn't for some reason I wasn't paying attention to all of that crossover material. Yes, that is actually on my list.
Okay, well then I'll keep it light and breezy because I know you are the expert of exposition. See what I did there? It's alliteration. Anyway, the thing that has me sketch about this movie, even though it's on my most anticipated list, is it's directed by M. Night Shyamalan.
Right.
And I'm gonna say it. Old won my award for worst movie of the year. And when it came out, and it it was the worst for me.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I felt like
That's
physically hurt
surprising.
watching that one. It had such a promising premise, but I think the execution of it was less than stellar. So when I see the premise of this, which is based on a novel by Paul Tremblay, it says while vacationing at a remote cabin, a young girl and her parents are taken hostage by four armed strangers who demand that the family make an unthinkable choice to avert the apocalypse. With limited access to the outside world, the family must decide what they believe before all is lost. That sounds like an amazing premise, right?
Right?
Now the question is, can M Night pull it off? And I'm one of those seeing is believing kind of guys. I'm not going to rely on reviews. I'm not going to rely on what other people say. I will see it, but I'm going to see it with expectations lowered. That way, I because I when I saw Old, admittedly that was on me. My expectations were high based on the premise. I was
Hmm.
like, how can somebody not do an amazing movie based on this premise? So I was expecting a lot. I was like, this is going to be the return of M. Night, back to form. Um, that to me wasn't the case. So going into this movie, again, this sounds so amazing. How could anybody mess it up? And I'm like, oh wait, yeah, yeah, I suppose it's possible there could be some missteps here. So I'm just going to kind of uh, simmer my expectations a bit and go in with a mega open mind. And if my mind gets blown, awesome. I will happily shout it from these microphone rooftops and say, yes, it was great. But if not, uh, I will be less disappointed, but disappointed nonetheless. But I am really looking forward to this. That's my number 8.
Well, your number 8 is actually my number 7. So awesome segue.
Sweet.
Uh, so this is based on a novel that I actually read called The Cabin at the End of the World, right? And as you alluded to, that's Paul Tremblay. The way that it plays out in the book, I doubt is sort of verbatim how M. Night is going to play it out on screen. And the reason that I say that is because M. Night Shyamalan definitely has his own both directorial style and his own storytelling style, both of which make him M. Night Shyamalan. And I think that, you know, rightly so for some movies, although Old for me wasn't one of them, but some other ones were. You know, he has definitely received some criticism for his storytelling style, that they are too gimmicky, that, you know, they're too wrapped up in the twist and whatever. Um, I actually didn't find that to be the case with Old. I actually thought it was not, you know, it wasn't a fabulous movie, but it was good. I actually liked it. But in any event, it was very M. Night Shyamalan. It has all of his trappings in it. Has very most of what makes M. Night Shyamalan movies, other than the twist, are a kind of gritty character study. His movies are very character. Um, the gravitas of the characters are very important and heavy. Other than I can think of maybe one movie where that didn't quite work out, even though I think it was supposed to be stronger than it was. You know, the characters become the story is one thing, but the characters really drive everything. And I know that that sounds simplistic, but for M. Night Shyamalan, I think he goes above and beyond the call when it comes to creating really memorable characters. So I do expect that this movie will fall along those lines. Now, let me get to sort of the meat of what this is about. So the what basically happens in the book is these, without too many spoilers, these men come to a cabin, and they're kind of in the middle of nowhere, and the family, which is two men and this little girl, are told that they alone can decide the outcome of the end of the world, whether the world ends, how it ends, a lot of things like that. And there's a lot of drama that goes along around that, because decisions that they are asked to make are increasingly heavy and personal. It's hard to even express how a novel about something perhaps that seems simple could expand into this just gut wrenching kind of story. And you know, there's a lot of things where you think that people who are the quote unquote bad guys are actually maybe not as morally compromised as you think they are. And then the people who you might think I want to root for maybe are a lot more morally compromised than you would have expected. I mean, there's a lot of meat in this story, I think, for M. Night to latch onto. But I'm with you on one thing, and that is it's really hit and miss sometimes with M. Night Shyamalan's style, and whether the narrative actually works for the story that he's presenting. So I don't know. I can tell you one thing that will be for sure: M. Night Shyamalan will make a cameo in this movie. That's
For
about the
sure.
only that's about the only thing I can say for certain. I can say though, after seeing Rupert Grint's work in Severance, which was also an M. Night Shyamalan production on Apple TV, the two of them clearly work well together. So I do have some hope for what has been collaborated here. It does feel like there is some substance. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I'm actually kind of excited for it because I do love this concept a lot, which is, you know, even the smallest, even the meekest among us can have such a weight on the impact of the rest of the world that we can literally alter the course of history simply by existing and making choices. That's pretty heavy, and it turns into a bit of an existential uh examination of what human beings do. So I have a lot of faith in this. We'll see, but I do have a lot of faith in this. It does seem like it's going to be good.
Fingers crossed.
Indeed.
I think my number 7 is going to be another crossover for us
Okay.
because coming out in 2023, it's been a minute since we've heard from this person, but here he is coming back next year.
Is it Zack Snyder?
No,
Oh.
no. I mean, no offense to Zack Snyder, but I can't think of a time his movies are going to be making my anticipated list anytime soon. I've just been burned so many times.
Oh no. Oh no.
But no, this one's actually beloved, and the film is called "How Do You Live?"
So this actually didn't make my list.
What?
Yeah, I thought about it, but it didn't make my list.
A movie that is written and directed by Miyazaki is not on your list?
I know. And after you tell me all of the why this made your list, I will give you a very short reason why it didn't make mine.
Okay, here is the reason why it's on my list.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Castle in the Sky, My Neighbor Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, Porco Rosso, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Ponyo. That's just what I've seen. That's why it's on my list. Because track record. Track record. You know, when you see something that he writes and produces or writes and directs, it's gonna hit you, and it's gonna hit you in the feels, and you're going to suddenly have to rework all sorts of lists about what your favorite animated whatevers is of all time are, and that is why it is my number 7.
Okay. And this is definitely and positively not to in any way uh underestimate the power of Studio Ghibli or Hayao Miyazaki, because everything that comes out of Studio Ghibli is generally of the highest quality caliber. And everything that they do is somehow or another, especially in animated circles, it becomes legend and lore. I mean, there's just so much around it. Spirited Away is one of my favorite movies by Studio Ghibli, and we still watch that probably at least once a year. It truly is amazing. Now, this is why this didn't make my list, because I actually don't think that it's coming. I think we may end up having to wait for this movie because it's being released in Japan in 2013.
I'll
I
fly
don't
there.
I don't know if it's actually going to hit US theaters in 2013. I have a feeling that it's going to end up being 2014, simply because of the way that theater rights end up being transmitted. I don't know. The way that things end up happening from intellectual property rights and then theater licensing. I just have a feeling it's not going to make it in our 2023. It'll end up being more like 2024. Um, But that's not to say that I'm not super interested in it. I am, because of course, I don't know how you couldn't be.
Okay, at least you weren't like, you don't understand the backstory and how evil everything is. And I'd be like,
Also,
did I miss it?
I think my favorite line from Hayao Miyazaki about this was because first of all, this particular film is one of those films that is definitely going to have the fantasy world as being big, huge, grand. I mean, it's going to be enormous. But the second thing is, um, when someone asked him, "Hey, why did you come out of retirement to make this movie?" Right? He simply just said, "Because I wanted to." And I mean, like, that is exactly what I would expect from him. So, good answer. Good answer. Um, and I can't remember who I read was going to do um the music on this. I don't remember, but it was somebody that I thought was like really good. So I guess we'll see. We'll see.
What
I'm
about
sure it's
your
sure it's going to be great.
number six? What's your number
Okay.
six?
My number 6 is a movie that I absolutely know very little about, and I do mean very little. I will read you the plot tagline, but I will also tell you why I'm so excited for this. It's called The Mothership. The Mothership is actually coming to Netflix at some point in 2023. I do not know the date. It's just a 2023 release by Netflix. The plot goes like this: 1 year after her husband mysteriously vanishes from their rural farm, single mother Sarah Morse and her children discover a strange extraterrestrial object underneath their home, which leads them to embark on a race to find their husband, father, and most importantly, the truth. This has so many different kind of crossover vibes for me from a number of different movies that I'm sure they're going to trope out in every single way, and I'm totally there for that. I love a good extraterrestrial sleuth movie where there is something to discover, something to find out. I even loved Brightburn, to be honest. But for me, the big thing is we have Halle Berry as Sarah Morse. And listen, I don't know about all the rest of you, but Halle Berry as the protective mother or the mother is just a force of nature to be reckoned with. And I really am looking forward to seeing what she does in this role because I feel like it could be amazing and awesome. So I'm excited for this one. It's called The Mothership, coming to Netflix in 2023. I think it's going to be good.
I instantly added it to my watch list. I had no idea that was again. How is it for these things that I have literally combed hundreds, if not thousands, of new releases coming in 2023. You're still finding things that I never heard of.
I'm just that good. I mean, I don't mean to pat myself on the back or anything, but I'm just that good. You know, I can sleuth out a good story. That's for sure.
I concur. You are that good. Uh,
Okay, so are we at your number 6 now?
we're at
We
my
are at
number
your number
six.
6. All right.
And okay, I'm gonna be honest. The first thing that got my attention, well, I should say, when I was doing all of this investigating that I just mentioned, I did go to movie production websites, distribution sites, see just to see, hey, what's coming? You know,
Mhm.
and it might not be, even though Letterboxd is a wonderful website. Money, please. Uh, I would be remiss to say that when it comes to upcoming films, they do kind of have a top heavy franchise thing going on, where the most anticipated movies are all of these sequels and basically the big blockbusters, the stuff that's going to make a ton of money, right?
Mhm.
So I did dig a little deeper and went to individual companies' sites, and one of the places I stopped by was everybody's favorite indie house, A24.
Happen to actually love A24 for lots of different reasons.
As do I. It was one of the reasons why I was like, you know what do they have on the docket? And there is one title on there that I didn't even realize was theirs that just grabbed my attention because it talks about something that's been very near and dear to me for a very long time. So much so that I did have a podcast based on it.
Mm.
I'm talking about professional wrestling.
Okay.
And the thing about wrestling is when they do movies about it, there are three ways that generally things lean. You know, one of three ways. You either get Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler, where everything's like super serious, and we're shining a light on what it's like to be someone that had the spotlight, and then you know you kind of fall out of it as you age, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Or you can have the comedic spoof, like a la Ready to Rumble. And you know what? For what it is, made with the cooperation and with the help of WCW, if it wasn't just made by them completely, by the way, that is what led to David Arquette being their champion on actual wrestling television. Yeah, it's a weird time to be a wrestling fan. And the third way is to do the kids focused movie. I don't remember what it was called, but WWE came out with one a couple years ago about a kid that got these powers from a luchador mask and wanted to be the next big NXT star, and that was WWE Films. So it generally falls into one of those three categories. Um, the Iron Claw, the movie that I'm talking about now, from Sean Durkin, is I'd say it's more towards the first thing, where we're going to get a deep look at the Von Erich family. And
Mm.
the thing is, for those of you that know the story, it is one that is filled with triumph, as they were, one of the biggest families in Texas, one of the biggest wrestling families ever. Generation after generation became a top star, but they also one of the most tragic families in wrestling, as the sons just kept dying through poor choices or bad accidents, or you know what have you. The Von Erichs are basically the perfect family to focus a movie on, if not just a series, because it's filled with such highs and lows, and it's real life. You know, the kind of the final piece that got me on board with this, A24 pro wrestling, I'm in. But throwing in on top of that, Zach Efron as Kevin Von Erich.
Oh, wow. Nice.
It is perfect because I don't know if you've noticed this, but Zach Efron, he's from what I understand, he's kind of dreamy. You
Dude,
know,
you know what? Zach Efron honestly has grown into the shoes that I think were presented to him as a younger person, and really matured well as an actor, like
Uh,
really
yes,
excellently. Because it's not just that, yeah, he's very good looking, but it's not just that. He definitely has a movie star quality about him that includes a screen presence that is different in a lot of ways from many other actors, and it's actually really good. I'm very impressed, very impressed.
he could have easily just rested on those laurels and been the guy that did Disney teen flicks and graduated up to rom coms and just being the
Hmm.
guy that's but I love you.
Right.
And, pouring down rain. But no, he has spread his wings and done some really, really wicked humor and did it with a straight face. I love that. And also shown up in things like The Greatest Showman.
Right.
This guy is getting out there. He's doing the work, and he's shown me that he is definitely a lot more than the High School Musical kid that he was. So to see him kind of take the lead on this with this particular person, not character, because this is true life, to take the lead to being this particular person, it's really big boots to fill, honestly. And I think this is going to be a wonderful showcase for Zac Efron to basically highlight his actual skill. And I cannot wait to see them release this movie and show the world just the story of the Von Erichs plus the abilities of Zac Efron. It's going to be a great watch, I think. That's why it's my
Cool.
number 6.
All right. My number 5 is I grew up in well, I did actually. I grew up in an era of my early childhood and teenage years were filled with vinyl. I definitely was at the end of a generation that still shopped at record stores as a teenager, as a young teenager. And just as I was exiting being a teenager, everything began to turn digital. So I still remember, I have like, a foot in both worlds. I still remember very vividly having a collection of records, um, being excited about what was coming next and seeing which record houses would produce what. And sometimes that really mattered, because it kind of gave you a sense of the caliber of the artist behind it. So in 2023, a movie that's apparently supposed to be released in March with very little fanfare so far. I hope that they give this a lot more. Called Spinning Gold is going to come out. It is the story of Columbia Records founder Neil Bogart. Now, the reason that this is interesting is because it was written, directed, and produced in part by his son. And that feels like that's about as biographical as you can get without being autobiographical, because obviously he was there to witness a lot. Um, there are, let me tell you who the cast of some of the memorable stars that they're going to bring on will be. Uh, George Clinton, Ron Isley, Cecil Holmes. Um, we have Gladys Knight, Paul Stanley, Farrah Lee, Frankie Cocker, Donna Summer, Bill Withers, Gene Simmons, Peter Criss. Just a bunch of, the people that kind of made Casablanca Records who they were back in the day. And it feels like this could be, I mean, I'm already sort of almost, drooling over what I think is going to be an excellent representation of costume and set design, and then there's just the whole nostalgia of the beginnings of this record company and what took it to become as big as it was. It sounds amazing. It's been in production in one way or another since around 2011. That's when the ideas were sort of, put around. Um, there were some there were some scandals that happened. It delayed the shooting, it delayed the production, but everything seems like it's all together and on track to be released in March of 2023. So I'm excited about this one. I love this kind of history because oftentimes we forget how integral some of these sort of linchpins in our past zeitgeist have been, but this one and these ideas are, they're big. They're just absolutely big. They connect so many other webs, especially in music entertainment. So I'm excited about this one.
I once again had to go to my letterbox and immediately add it to my watch list. This is something that is again right up my alley. I
Yep,
love these
I
things.
figured. I figured.
Okay, so my number 5, it is set to be released in 2023. Like all of our movies, I don't know why I feel the need to say that.
Well, if you know the month or the season, that might help.
Release date. Well, it's set to premiere at Sundance, so that's what,
Oh,
late
okay.
January.
Yeah, so it may not actually get even a wide theatrical release unless somebody actually picks it up. But I mean, it's a good indication.
It's going to be distributed by United Artists.
Okay.
And the first thing, much like um, the Iron Claw, the first thing I noticed was
The Claw. Sorry. Yes.
the first thing I noticed was the production company. One of the production companies is Annapurna Pictures.
Hmm.
If you're familiar with Annapurna, you know they are incredible. And not only is their the film production company incredible, their gaming division is awesome. So they make movies, they make films, and I love both. So that was the first thing that caught my eye. The second thing I caught my eye is, I'm scrolling through their slate is the premise. The premise was, well, let me tell you what it. First, let me tell you what the movie is. Let me tell you what the movie is. That might help. It's called Landscape with Invisible Hand,
Oh.
and it is based on a 2017 novel of the same name by M.T. Anderson. And the plot is in a near future in which an alien species known as the Vub has taken over Earth, an inspiring teenage artist and his girlfriend hatch a scheme to make money by broadcasting their dating life to the fascinated aliens in wake of the Vub's labor-saving technology. But the two teens slowly come to hate each other and can't break up without bankrupting their families.
Oh my.
It's a comedy, sci-fi comedy starring Tiffany Haddish and Asante Black.
Wow.
So just the idea of, okay, these two kids want to broadcast the relationship. That's social media today in a nutshell, right? But to do it because of aliens, like, okay.
Wow.
I kind of want to see what that's all about. And
That does actually sound good.
and then you add in, oh, but they hate each other, but they can't break up. You hear me? I'm laughing. I'm laughing just from the premise alone. It's got me in. I'm in. And the fact that again, well, it stars Tiffany Haddish and Asante Black. Sure, that's great. But I tell you what, I love watching Clifton Collins Jr. on screen. That's my guy. That's who I'm interested in seeing. Ever since I saw him in the sequel to Boondock Saints, which eh, wasn't, that's a road, that's a thread I don't want to pull right now. But if we ever did a list of disappointing sequels, yeah, we might have to visit that. But Clifton Collins Jr. Jr. is, like I said, he's my guy. I love watching him, and it's never in a super major role, but he's always kind of fun to catch on screen. So kind of a little plus, an extra check mark for me. But yeah, this whole premise has it made me go, that's on the list for sure. And I kind of wish I was going to Sundance to see it premiere, so I wouldn't have to wait so long to actually. I'd want to go to Sundance for a lot of reasons, but
Oh yeah.
specifically to see movies that I don't want to have to wait more months for would be great. That's why it's my number 5.
Uh that's a pretty solid choice, I think. I feel like that's actually a really good solid choice. Okay. My number 4 is okay, you just got to listen to this to believe it because and speaking of hit or miss, either you love this or you hate this. There is no in between. But the cast in this movie will blow you away. No matter who you think you no matter whether you think you're going to like this movie or not, you're going to be blown away by the cast. Okay. And I believe that this movie is coming out in June of 2023. So summer's going to be a big time for movies for us. Here's the premise. You ready? In 1955, students and parents from across the country gather for a scholarly competition. Rest, relaxation, comedy, drama, and romance at a junior stargazer convention held in a fictional American desert town. Okay, so the name of this movie is called Asteroid City. It is directed, and written by none other than Wes Anderson. Now, whether you love Wes Anderson or hate Wes Anderson, listen to the cast. Tilda Swinton, Adrian Brody, Tom Hanks, Margot Robbie, Rupert Friend, Bryan Cranston, Scarlett Johansson, Hope Davis, Jeff Goldblum, Jeffrey Wright. Who else do we have? We have Matt Dillon. We have Sophie Lillis. We have who else do we? Trying to think. Oh, Steve Carell. We also have who's the last person that I wanted to bring forth? There was one other person I wanted to bring forth, but anyway,
Fisher Stevens.
William Dafoe. William Dafoe.
Hmm.
So I mean, and there's more. There's more, but this. Look, there's something here for everybody. Everybody's got to see somebody that they like inside of this movie. And of course, it's Wes Anderson, so it's going to be campy and crazy. It's going to be all over the place. It's going to be, you know, one of those crazy, highly stylized, crazy dialogue, but it's going to be epic. No matter how you slice it, this movie is going to be epic. So, Asteroid City, 1955 movie. A movie during the 1955 era. Again, I feel like this is one of those. Yes, possibly Wes Anderson could be hit or miss, but really, no, not this. This feels like it is just instant gold. I just feel like everybody's going to go, "Oh my god, did you see this movie?" And yeah, that definitely puts it way up there on my list. So, Asteroid City, summer of 2023.
Crossover.
It's not a crossover.
For our lists, it is.
Oh, I thought you were saying it was a crossover, like this was based on some other Wes Anderson, and I was going to go, no. Because yeah, I'll tell you why I thought that in a second. Okay, so where did Asteroid City come on your list?
I am not telling.
Okay.
Because it is not my number 4.
Because it's not your number 4. Okay, well, on to number 4.
My number 4 is, well, It's called Spaceless.
Oh,
Are you familiar with a little director named Gore Verbinski?
I actually am.
Well, he's directing this film, and here's the synopsis. A man wakes up inside a spacesuit, tumbling helplessly through space, with a computer designed to keep him company until his air runs out, trying to solve the mystery of his death.
Oh, good lord.
It just sounds like an amazing movie, like a single, almost like a single actor, even. Just
Like Interstellar without the hope.
yeah. I I will say I'm not a super huge fan of downer movies, and quite frankly, I don't know how this can be anything but. But the history of Gore Verbinski doing things like the Pirates movies and
Right.
um, the Lone Ranger, The Ring, you know, things like this make me think that this super simple premise of this guy, he's just floating in space, is going to have some sort of bigger thing going on with it. Um, if it's just this guy floating in space, I'd be fine with that too because I love really, really deep character studies, and it doesn't get much more deep than one person on screen for 90 minutes, does it? And
Yeah.
and a relationship with, I guess, an onboard computer, trying to figure out exactly what happened. So it's got a bit of mystery to it. It's got a lot of tragedy kind of writing all the way throughout. I saw this premise, I saw who was attached, and instantly in my head, I'm not only there day one, I am there at a theater, ready and willing to give my money to see this on a big screen.
Yeah, that does sound good.
I don't know much more else about it. I gotta be honest. I don't even know who's attached to star in it. So I'm gonna leave it at that and say that is my number 4.
Wow. Okay. Good choice. I think that's a great choice actually. Okay. My number 3 is a movie called The Pale Blue Eye. The Pale Blue Eye is set to release on Netflix at some point. It says 2022, but then I have 2023 as the actual release because I have not seen this on Netflix. So I don't know whether it's like I'm not sure. Now I'm starting to doubt whether did this actually already release on Netflix? Because I have that it's supposed to release in 2023 that the trailer came out about I don't know, less than like at the beginning of December. But I can't find according to the regular where it actually is, it looks like it actually came out in 2022, but I don't actually see it. Hmm.
Well, I'm having it as a release date of December 23rd. So 6 days ago or 5 days ago.
Wow, that's actually odd. Maybe they had suggested that it was going to be released in 2023, but then moved up the production schedule. Okay.
You
Well,
know
I
what?
guess
You know what? It might be. Okay. For those of you that don't know, right now we are in the thick of kind of Oscar bait season. And one of the rules of being eligible for, an Oscar is you have to have a certain number of days in a theater,
right, you
have
have
an
to have
actual theater
theatrical
release,
release, right?
but it
Yeah.
has to be in the previous calendar year. So what you'll find is movie studios will put in a limited release of movies that are eventually just going to go straight to streaming, but they'll have that limited release in theaters like right at the end of the year, so they can meet the qualification for um, awards. Even if they only do that limited release in theaters, or you know what, sometimes they'll even do the limited release in 2020. Like, we'll just use this as an example. In 2022, they'll do the limited release, and then in February, March, or sometimes even after the actual Oscars air, they'll have the wide release. So the only people that actually saw the movie were members of the Academy and those that were able to get to the limited release. I know it's kind of cockeyed and crazy, but I think what might have happened here is it got its, you know, end of the year limited release to be eligible for awards, because looking at
Right.
this cast, it does certainly seem like that is something they would be going for with this movie. So I'm maybe they got that just right at the end there, right under the buzzer. They got that 2022 release in, and then uh, once that's done for the limited release, they'll be able to put it out there for everybody else. Because if you
Y-
recall, the Glass Onion had a it had a wide release, but it was still only in theaters
Uh
for a little while.
okay, I see where the confusion is. The confusion is The Pale Blue Eye was released in select cinemas on December 23rd, 2022, before its streaming release on January 6, 2023 by Netflix. So it had an extremely limited release, and that is really just to give it Oscar status. That is really
Yes.
just so that they can say that the movie was released in theaters and so that it is eligible for Oscar status. Okay, well, so I'm going to stand by my choice then, because coming to streaming service in Netflix in 2023, which is technically when it was supposed to be released,
Hmm.
this film, The Pale Blue Eye, is I'm obsessed with our obsession lately about Edgar Allan Poe. I love it because there's so much about Edgar Allan Poe that feels like it's just ripe material for all kinds of uh great stories, great storytelling. It basically goes something kind of like this. Um, there is a veteran detective, and he has to solve a series of murders at the West Point Academy. And he actually enlists the help of Edgar Allan Poe, who's a student at the academy, to find out what happened. And eventually, they find out that the murders are related to some kind of sorcery magic, or that's what we think. And then there's basically more things that happen as another murder happens and their heart is ripped out, a bunch of things like that. So, I mean, it sounds really good. Also, I mean, just to be totally honest, I really like Scott Cooper. I feel like his stories are always super interesting to read about. And I like Christian Bale now that he's out of his weird phase of superhero stuff.
What are you talking
Um,
about?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So I actually kind of have some high hopes for this. I am also, quite honestly, absolutely fascinated, and I've said this numerous times on this show and others, with the continued escalation of interest in Edgar Allan Poe and the the sticky side of uh literature mystery crossover, literature mystery horror crossover. There is so much kind of in here that, I'm sure a lot of people know the story of the Telltale Heart, they know the story of the Headless Horseman, but Edgar Allan Poe's complete works are kind of enormous and very under rated in terms of just sort of like the broad sweep of how much material he had out there. And then of course there's the real life Edgar Allan Poe, which we just barely get to scratch the surface of. It's super interesting. I feel like this movie could be really cool, and I'm kind of excited about it. And also I'm always willing to give an actor that I have previously thrown in the trash can a rehab check-in to see, hey, have you rehabilitated yourself? Are you doing some good work? What's going on? And I feel like this could definitely be that role for Christian Bale. So here's hoping. I'm crossing my fingers. It's very high on my list because I love the subject matter and I love the story that they're trying to tell here. But you know, whether you like Christian Bale or whether you don't, the man is a force of nature. And as an actor, he definitely always brings some kind of gravitas to the screen. So I'm hoping that that works in this role. I'm excited about it.
It is once again not one that crossed my path, but seeing all of this about it makes me wonder how.
See, you know what and I'll tell you what makes our lists interesting because they are diverse and they don't have a lot of crossover is you have one methodology of looking for and latching on to films, and I have very different methods of not just finding films but knowing about films. And I think that between the two of them we always come up with a really interesting list that surprisingly have fewer crossovers than I ever would have expected. But I think maybe even more importantly, we clearly gather information um, both differently, and you can see why the multiple sources of information coming into filmmaking is so important. Like, there's really a lot of it. So even when you think, "Oh yeah, I know everything that's coming out next year," no you don't. You probably really don't, because there is just so much. And unless you know exactly where to look or how to find these things, or you're on someone's chat board or whatever, you really may not know about them. So yeah, that's why shows like this are so important.
I think we do a good service for the good people out there and the bad people too. We don't leave anybody out.
We don't. If you want to watch movies and you're a bad person, maybe it'll keep you out of trouble. So watch those movies. It's good.
Yeah, we're recommending some awesome stuff. I honestly didn't think we would have this much separation between us. Trying to come up with movies that just aren't franchise movies to look forward to. But here we are
Right.
with only a couple of crossovers so far. I'm I'm feeling pretty good about this.
Me too.
So I guess it's time for my number 3.
Yep. Number 3.
Number 3. Okay. Would you watch a movie? Let me break out some of this cast real quick. Would you watch a movie with Casey Affleck, Gary Oldman, Rami Malek,
Mm.
Robert Downey Jr., Kenneth Branagh? I never know how to say his name.
Brenna.
Branagh. Yeah, that's what I said. You can't see me rolling my eyes. Like,
Ha!
anyway, Florence Pugh, Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, and led by Cillian Murphy. Would you watch that
I
movie
might.
based on
Yeah,
the cast alone?
definitely might. I think
What,
this movie almost made my list too.
what if I told you that movie is directed by Christopher Nolan?
Okay, then you lose me.
Oh, what if I told you that the movie was about Robert Robert Oppenheimer and his role in the development of the atomic bomb during World War
See,
II?
this almost made my list. It almost made my list because I do think it's going to be fascinating. I also think that unless you are a history buff, it might be a little bit dry, but I think
I
it's going to be a good movie.
I think is going to be amazing. And one of the things that I dig most about it is the fact that it's not going to be Tenant.
Yeah, right. That's a good point.
It's been a minute since we've had any kind of, straightforward linear storytelling from Christopher Nolan. Because,
Indeed.
yeah, but the last one was The Dark Knight Rises, no, or Dunkirk, right?
Dunkirk, yeah, that was pretty linear storytelling.
We had Inception. I loved Inception because I'm a big, dreams and lucid dreaming kind of guy. I love
I
that kind of
also
stuff.
I also loved Inception. That's still one of my favorite movies.
As is mine. When my copy of the where is it? The shooting script of Inception came in. I watched the movie, with script in hand. Like yes, it's a thing weird movie nerds do. Get over it, people. We're movie nerds. Um, I was watching, and what made me so proud was when my oldest asked, "Can we watch it again?" and let me hold the script. I was like, "Yes." So I think I'm doing a good job here with the kids. Anyway, number this is my movie I'm talking about Oppenheimer. So it's we're telling the story of the guy that helped develop the A bomb, right? And it does sound dry, but looking at the cast and looking at the way Nolan has a way to shine up a story, I have a lot of hope for this, and especially once we started hearing the news that the what was it, the Trinity test to test the the atomic bombs,
Right?
no CGI. They did the explosions with practical effects.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, that's that's something else. People talk about James Cameron, raising the bar, and I'm not going to knock James Cameron. I haven't seen any of the Avatar movies, but out of all of the other movies that he's made, I can't think of a bad one among them. So yes, James Cameron has a way of not necessarily elevating story in as much as a way of elevating the way we tell stories with technology. That I think that's what his legacy is. Nolan has a way of elevating story, whether it's about a guy that puts on a bat suit or if it's about a guy that lays down and goes to sleep, or if it's a guy that just kind of forgets what he was doing. Nolan takes things and brings it up to another level. So to see him take what I'm going to call it a biopic, right? To take that concept and see it on a Nolan level, I am intrigued. I want to see this, and I want to see it play out on a huge IMAX screen because that's just how he does it. In some sections, it was shot in IMAX black and white.
Wow.
Um, I haven't seen that before, so I am really looking forward to seeing what it's going to look like. And the story of Oppenheimer might not be one that I'm familiar with, but everything about this interests me. So I am looking forward to learning, and that's why it is my number three.
Nice. That's a good choice. And like I said, that almost made my list. I think the historical value alone to get people interested in that story is worth the movie. Although I just I'm just going to say this. Remember that fictional accounts of real life events do not necessarily mean that those events actually happened. Like, if you want to get a rough guideline of the history, that's great, but everybody do the reading, do the research. It's worth it. That's a very interesting period of time.
I want to throw, because you mentioned this. I'm going to throw this out there. A family member whom I won't name recently
Who shall
saw
remain nameless.
recently saw Elvis, and the one from Baz Luhrmann,
Hmm.
and he said he loved the movie, and I'm like, yeah, stylized film. What's not to like? Baz Luhrmann loves music, so his movie about a musician is going to naturally, it's going to hit certain notes, so to speak, pun intended. And he said, no, the best part is it's true. I'm like, well, I mean,
Mm.
let's not get hung up on that true word, because no matter how much of the events are in a movie are mirroring real life, there's things to remember. One, it's a movie,
Right.
and you're talking trying to fit decades of a person's life into a couple of hours. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance and subtext and context just sitting on the cutting room floor of the film, and even more so, that was just never in the script because
Right.
you only got a couple hours.
And there's a lot of controversy around Elvis that definitely didn't make it into the film.
Mm-hmm.
And some of this stuff is like, this is why it's so important when we're talking about especially historical epics, which we're about to get to with one of my number one choices. Um the 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 idea that history can tell you a story is one thing, and this is narrative fiction. Narrative historical fiction is a thing. We love to have storytelling be a part of our understanding of history. And I fully am on board with that because I think it helps us to assimilate and process the information. But it's still a story. And we need to recognize that the facts of the day are different from a narrative storytelling or a fictional account of what was going on. So anytime that we see a movie like Glory, which is great, it's still a fictionalized version of what was or what did happen there. So yes, there are some highlights of things that did really happen, but they by no means is this like a representation of what really did happen. That's just not possible. We don't, unless it's a documentary, we probably don't have that glimpse, because narrative storytelling is about telling the story, not about necessarily telling the history. It's just sometimes they combine a little bit. So I
And
mean,
don't even get us started on dialogue.
yeah, I mean, if we're, well, we won't jump down that rabbit hole today, but we'll jump down it another time, I promise, because that's definitely a conversation worth having. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so are we ready for my number two?
I'm so ready for your number two.
All right, this is going to shock everybody because it's probably going to be a terrible movie, but I don't care. It's on my number two because I want to see it so bad. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. I am actually super excited about this, and I'll tell you why. One of my favorite storytelling tropes over the past, I would say, it really has taken good form in the past 10 years, is to subvert tropes. And no one does it better than horror. Um, for whatever reason, the horror genre is sort of not afraid to really dig deep and come up with just bastardizations of different storytelling lines, different, again, just subverting tropes, turning them upside down. And they do their fair share of trope telling as well. But I am kind of excited for this because, one, I really like the idea of turning something that we all know and love. And believe me, I grew up on Winnie the Pooh. There is something very special about this story, but turning it on its head and creating a bloodthirsty killer in the Hundred Acre Woods, and just making sort of a mock of the stuff that we love so much. And I think one of the reasons that I also really like this is because horror as a genre has really kind of found a stride recently, like in the past 10 years or so. And a lot of this has to do with sort of breaking out of its shell and not being afraid to tell stories that are clearly going to be not just disturbing, because I think a lot of movies can be disturbing, but really create a kind of subversive lens into old tropes or time tested stories or whatever, because it really creates that kind of like, oh wow, what did they do here? It clearly, the concept is controversial, I guess, is maybe a good way. Obviously Winnie the Pooh is a beloved icon of childhood. I mean, there's no way around that. But secondly, it has that kind of quality to it that I think a good horror movie has, kind of like Evil Dead, where you're basically not afraid to just subvert any trope that's out there and say, this can be horror too. And I kind of love that. Um, I'm a bit excited about the release of this in American theaters. So I am not going to give away too much from this movie because I think it it will, because I think it'll hit differently if you don't know exactly what's happening. But basically, Winnie the Pooh and Piglet become feral and they kind of go crazy. It's sort of uh it's sort of a play on some of the most intrinsic issues that we face today, like food supply shortages and what happens when we are driving creatures out of their ecosystem. So there's a wider allegory happening here, but it's also obviously a murderous, rampaging uh, movie that has a crazy and uh wonderful and beloved antagonist who truly does go crazy. I just absolutely love this idea. I love the kind of subversion of tropes that we sometimes rely on way too much. And when we upend them, when we create this kind of like, oh, there's something different here, we all look at other material differently. And that can sometimes create really excellent new screenplays. It can really sometimes like, I know we all hate kind of like the cookie cutter effect in Hollywood where, one movie comes out and then 15 others come out around the same thing, but generally 3 or 4 of them will be really good. And so I kind of like this, and I would love to see other fairy tales and one of the reasons I think that this actually hits home with me is because in the 1970s, um and I didn't watch them until, well, actually I guess it was the 1980s. I didn't watch them until much later, but there was a collection of movies that came out that basically were like the retold fairy tales in horror style. So there was like a Snow White story with Sigourney Weaver. There was a Princess and the Pea story that was absolutely horrific. There were a bunch of sort of like horror related movies that came out that kind of turned the whole thing on its head. And I I feel like it does us a lot of good sometimes to revisit these tropes and re-explore them with different genre eyes. So I'm really excited about this, not because I think it's going to be the best movie of the year, but because I love the reinvigoration of horror as a genre mixed into all of our different trope ideas as we are moving forward in filmmaking storytelling. So Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey gets my number 2 choice.
That is an amazing pick.
But you didn't see that coming.
I should have. I should have. Honestly, there were a few titles that I've seen that are coming up that I'm like, yeah, that's probably going to be on her list, and
Did I
that's
sell
probably
it good
going to be on
enough?
her list. Yes.
Did I sell it good? Did I pitch it?
Oh, I'm in.
All right.
Um,
We'll have to have a watch party, Josh.
we can. Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. I just knew, and between the two of us, you would have a good representation of horror.
Of course. And always on my list, I always have one outlier that's like, oh my God, that's crazy. How did that get there?
But what's not on my list in my number 2 spot is Cocaine Bear. That's not on my list.
I almost put that in there, and then I thought, nah, you know what? No. I do think it's cool, but I'm not interested in seeing it. Like, it's not one of those movies that I have to rush out to the theater to go see.
Mm. Fair enough.
I would put socks on to walk into the living room to go see it, but I don't know if I want to get dressed up to go to the theater to go see it.
Absolutely fair. I find wearing clothes repulsive.
I said dressed up, not dressed.
Yeah, that's what I meant too.
So what's your number 2?
My number 2, I'm going to be honest, this is going to be another real quick one because I saw a name and I said, I'm in. And that name was Taika Waititi.
Oh.
And this year he has a movie coming out called Next Goal Wins. It's a movie that does not have Thor in it. So how about that?
Hey.
Next Goal Wins is an upcoming sports comedy drama film directed by Taika Waititi, who co-wrote the screenplay with Ian Morris. It's based on a 2014 documentary of the same name, and it's about Coach Thomas Rongen, being played by Michael Fassbender, and how he took the American Samoa national team from basically a weak soccer team and made them to a good soccer team. So imagine, it's your Mighty Ducks, it's your the Big Green, it's your Bad News Bears, whatever movie you want to compare it to. Team go from bad to good because of coach.
Oh, like the Mighty Ducks.
Then there you go, the Mighty Ducks. By the way, Game Changers, amazing show on Disney Plus. Check it out.
Love
Disney,
that.
give me money. And Next Goal Wins, being a comedy as well as a drama, directed by Taika, is exactly the kind of thing that I want to see because he has a unique vision when it comes to the movies that he makes. Yes, the Marvel stuff aside, although I will say when it came time for Ragnarok, he took that character and made him, might I say, watchable in Ragnarok. Not going to diss on Thor or Thor 2, but it wasn't until Ragnarok where I was like, okay, now this is a franchise. So just looking at things that he's done before, Eagle versus Shark, Jojo Rabbit, Hunt for the Wilder People, and all of these things, all of these sort of original ideas where they were loaded with emotion when it comes to the dramatic elements of the story, where the heartache was there, the emotion was there. Taika knows how to bring that to the screen, but he also knows how to fill the gaps of tugging on your heartstrings with stuff that's just funny. And there are a lot of directors out there that can do comedy and they can do drama And some would just even say they can do both. But I think what makes Taika so unique is not the fact that he can do both, but the fact that he blends it very seamlessly. There are a lot of movies you can watch that have both elements, but you can clearly see the line between, okay, this is a comedy scene and this is the drama scene. Taika has a way of just making it all blend together so you're laughing and you're crying like almost at the same time because you have all of these feels going on. He sets you up to knock you down, and I think this is my bold prediction for this movie. Next goal wins. I am going to literally fist pump when the time is for that big match at the end of the game, and America Samoa pulls off the unexpected victory. I guess that's I assume where it's going, and I expect I'm going to be like, yes, they did it. Why? Because Taika knows how to make me feel what he wants me to feel, and
Right.
that is why I love I love his movies, and that is why. Um, Considering all the other movies you heard me talk about before, that's why this is my number two, because he is a craftsman, and I appreciate that to no end. So the next goal wins is my number two.
Nice. That's a really good choice. And also Taika Waititi. I don't care what anybody says about, especially, disgruntled Marvel fans. Taika Waititi stands in a class by himself in terms of being able to deliver not just excellent content, but a variety of content with excellence. I mean, it's just
Hmm.
some directors, slash writers, uh, excel in one genre or in one type, and they just cannot branch out. Taika Waititi is not that kind of director, writer, or producer. He just has an eclectic multiverse of excellent skills. So, always a pleasure to see him come back with something. Okay, well,
Number one
we
time.
are at my number one. Okay, so I don't know if this is going to be a good movie. I really don't. I really hope so. I had a lot of high hopes for Universal's Monster Suites, and it kind of fell apart. And it made me really sad because that happens to be one of my most favorite genres. I love the monster movies. I used to go and see creature double features at theaters. My mom used to drop us off. We would spend 4.5, 5 hours at the movie theater. It was such an awesome experience. I just loved it. So I grew up loving creature features. And Dracula is actually one of them. Um, and I had a lot of high hopes for the Dracula movie that was Dracula Untold, and then it just sort of dissipated and slipped into thin air. I don't know why that whole thing fell apart. It's still a solid movie, just wasn't what I think everyone expected it to be. But I mean, I still love it. So this is actually related to this. From Amblin Entertainment comes The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Now, if you don't know what is going on in The Last Voyage of the Demeter, I'm going to sort of summarize it just a little bit. Based on a single chilling chapter from Bram Stoker's classic novel Dracula, The Last Voyage of the Demeter tells the terrifying story of the merchant ship Demeter, which was chartered to carry private cargo with 50 unmarked wooden crates from Carpathia to London. So this is basically the prequel story to what happens in the story Dracula when Dracula gets to London, and all of the tale of Dracula begins to unfold while he's in London. Um, Strange events befall the doomed crew as they attempt to survive the ocean voyage, stalked each night by a merciless presence aboard the ship. When the Demeter finally arrives off the shores of England, it is a charred, derelict wreck with no trace of the crew. Um, I I really love this story. I have very high hopes for it. this is one. First of all, it takes place on a ship, so huge points right there. Because if you don't know, I'm a huge ship nerd. Love ships. Big
Ship
big
fetish.
plus. Big plus. I mean, I am the queen of black sails. I do actually, lots of things like that. I also am a Horatio Hornblower official member of the Appreciation Society. So things like that. Okay, but I digress. Uh, the Last Voyage of the Demeter is probably one of the most interesting and maybe least understood chapters in Bram Stoker's Dracula. So much happens. And I can see why they chose this to really like open a portal into, because it's rich with unspoken drama. And so from a movie perspective, that just is like fertile territory. It's great. You can really dig in there and do all kinds of stuff. And you know that you're dealing with vampires, which makes it all the better. Um, it's like I said, it's produced by Amblin Entertainment. It doesn't really have any like A power movie stars, but I feel like that's actually okay. I kind of like that because the expectation here, I think, is that this is going to tell a previously sort of underrated Dracula story. And so I kind of like the fact that it doesn't have a lot of A-list actors in it, because it makes the story more somehow more tellable. I don't know how to describe that, but just feels right. Um, the I think the biggest part of this movie that makes me think this is going to be a great movie for 2023 is we've seen the culmination of a lot of, I won't call them franchises. I'm going to call them like points of horror interest come and go. We've had zombies. We're still, you know, moving out of that phase. We've already had a lot of vampires. um, we have told quite a few over the last 20 or so years, big monster movies, and Universal really tried hard to produce something with their monster franchise that ultimately didn't quite work. They just didn't catch it right. But this movie, I think, has some standalone power to it, which I happen to think is going to be really good. There's the sort of isolation of being at sea, which is a big thing. But secondly, there is something about personal horror when you have the stakes so high that you remember it as, this was very impactful. And if you've read Bram Stoker's Dracula, this particular chapter of the book is about as haunting as they come. It's extremely terrifying because there's just so much shrouded in mystery, and you just don't know what's really going on. It's so excellently crafted. So I'm really excited about this, both because it's Bram Stoker's Dracula, and secondly because it takes place at sea, and thirdly because I'm really kind of glad that we're not just giving up on the monster movie, but we're trying to refine it and finesse it for a modern audience. And I feel like that's the right way to go. Give it nuance, give it flavor, give it a sense of important impact instead of it just being rampaging or, so highly stylized that you lose the actual plot threads in the overproduction of the movie. So I really have some high hopes for this. I wouldn't have put it in my number one spot if I didn't really think that it had some excellent capacity, some excellent. Um, I'm really anticipating what they might do with this. I feel like it's got some good power behind it. So there you go. And also the let's see, the chapter on this one, I believe, is called The Captain's Log, which just sort of like reiterates everything. And we don't even know what happens to the captain because all we get in the book is the telling of what of all of the things that are going on. So it's kind of cool. It's actually, I mean, I feel like there's some really good positive storytelling promise in this. So there you go. And this, I believe, comes out in, when does this come out? It's in post production now. Um, I think that it's supposed to come out. Oh, it says, okay. It says it's supposed to. Oh wow. So they changed this. Wow. Okay. So I guess it's actually not going to come out in 2023. I mean 2022. It's apparently not going to come out now until 2023. Wow, that's really far in the future. But you know what? I feel like this is actually wrong. I think it is going to come out in 2022. I don't think I think that this article base is wrong. Um, because I have information that it's supposed to be released in 2022. So we'll see. But anyway, this is what I think is going to be the best of 2022.
2023.
That's what it says, but I think that they've actually moved that up. I think their post production has actually been moved up, and it may not be reflected on the major source material, but I'm pretty sure that it's coming out in 2022.
So in the next 3 days.
Wow. No. I just said that totally wrong, didn't I? It's supposed to be released in 2020. There were release dates for 2024, but it's actually going to come out in 2023. I'm so sorry. It's late. I haven't had enough coffee. Give me a break. Anyway.
No, I'm not definitely not going to be jumping on any kind of, hate on Jen bandwagon for making a tiny error, because God knows I've been saying things like "who blah 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 blah" all night.
It's next year. It's definitely next year, and I believe it's in the fall of next year. I think they've got it timed to come out before Halloween, but in like the end of summer kind of like blockbuster kind of era.
Well, it almost made my list. I gotta be honest.
Really?
It did, and also for the for the sake of embarrassing myself, you started talking about what your movie's going to be, and you brought up Dracula, and I'm like, oh, it's Renfield. It's got to be Renfield or Renfield. It's definitely Renfield, right? Yeah, of course, it's Renfield. And then you're like, not saying Renfield. I'm like, oh, yeah, just as a bonus, I guess. Next year there is a film coming out called Renfield, and it stars Nicholas Hoult as Renfield, who is
Right.
a lackey of Count Dracula, played
Right.
by Nicolas Cage. And so when
I
you were
don't
building
I
up
I
to it, I
don't
was like,
really hold out a lot of hope for that particular movie. As entertaining as I think Nicolas Cage is, I don't particularly think that that movie is going to be all that great. But I do think that this movie, Last Voyage of the Demeter, actually has real promise. This does have real promise.
I think you're right, but unfortunately, it didn't. I mean, if we did 15 slot lists, it would be on my list somewhere in the back end there, 12 or so. But due to hours of discussion and research, and looking at demographics and target audiences, we decided that we would only go our top tens. And okay, that's not quite true. We said, should we do 10? And we're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, that's like a nice round number. And what started off as a show that, I hope we can make this last an hour.
We have a
Yeah.
lot to say about movies, and it's okay. It's all good. It's all good.
And I will say, from what I'm hearing, people kind of enjoy our little tangents. So, thank you, because we're first and foremost people that just love movies and talking about movies. And second of all, I was going to make a joke about how uh, our run times are sort of long. And then I realized uh, we talked about the locations of some of our bigger audiences, and I'm like, yep, it kind of tracks.
Yeah.
But now we're at my number one, which
Number one.
we already know what it is. I said there was crossover, and I didn't want to say where it was because, well, it was my number one, and I didn't want to give that away. Asteroid City.
Nice.
It is absolutely my number one. First, Wes Anderson. It doesn't really matter what the movie is. I'm going to see it. So I might not like it as much as some other Wes Anderson films, but I won't know until I actually see it because I love the guy's eye when it comes to his films. You know that when you're going to go see a Wes Anderson movie, you're going to see something that is visually appealing, at the very least. So there, and I can't say just visually appealing. It's going to be visually unique. Something you're going to see something that you don't really see from any other filmmakers. So that's number one. Number two, he always manages to get the most interesting cast,
Hmm.
even if they're not the biggest stars. Although arguably this could be one of his biggest star movies that
Right.
he's
I mean,
done.
I listed off a bunch, and it's a lot. It's a lot.
what movie can you say has both Tom Hanks and Fisher Stevens and wasn't made in 1986?
Exactly.
So this has a lot of things going for it, and then if you add on to that uh, uh, a period-ish piece, right, about junior stargazers, it's everything is lining up for me to love this movie, and I, for one, cannot wait to see this. Again, opening day, ticket in hand. This is a theater trip for me, and I'm all for it. I can't really expand on it without repeating everything you said, but I will just reiterate Asteroid City is my number one most anticipated non-franchise non-franchise movie coming out in 2023. Um, and quite frankly, even if we included franchises in here, it would be on the list
Yeah.
without a
Me
doubt.
too. Me too. Mostly anything Wes Anderson is worth seeing, even if you don't specifically love everything Wes Anderson. They're such a part of our cultural zeitgeist that usually it's worth seeing. So yeah, absolutely.
And that's our list.
All
That's
right.
that's what we brought for you tonight.
This was a
Um,
good list. I mean,
I think so too.
a lot of our lists are good, but I have to say that, and one of the caveats that I think that we should put here is we should come back to this list at the end of next year, and we should discuss: did we like them? Did we not like them? Because the anticipation of something is quite a bit different than the actual realization of it. So they may not all pan out the way that we think that they're going to, but I feel like we're off to a good start.
Okay, let's see if I can do that. Alexa, set reminder 1 year from today to revisit this list.
What time today should I remind you?
Um, 10 a.m.
Okay, I'll remind you December 28th, 2023 at 10 a.m.
Thank you.
Wow.
You're
Okay.
so
Well, if you're
welcome.
Alexa,
Your kindness
if,
really
if
gives me a charge.
oh, well, thank you, AI. You're so sweet. Honestly, if in this period, by then you still have your Alexa plugged in and it reminds you, I'll be very, very impressed.
Maybe I should have set it for Showtime.
Yeah, so, like at least a week before, right? It's just so that we can like plan. Okay, so do you want to go through your list and then I'll go through my list and then I will give you some really cool homework assignment for next week. And big hint, it has nothing to do with 2023. So
Interesting. So yeah, I'll go through my list.
all right.
Starting with number 10, Operation Fortune. Number 9, Theater Camp. Number 8, Knock at the Cabin. Number 7, How Do You Live? Number 6, The Iron Claw. Number 5, Landscape with Invisible Hand. Number 4, Spaceless. Number 3, Oppenheimer. Number 2, Next Goal Wins. And number 1, Asteroid City. How about you, Jen?
Okay. My list starts as such. Number 10, Elemental. This is from Disney. Number 9, Roosevelt. This is Martin Scorsese. Number 8, 65. That is the prehistory time traveling Adam Driver movie. Number 7, Knock at the Cabin. That actually sounds so good. Number 6, The Mothership. That's on Netflix. Number 5, Spinning Gold, the story of Casablanca Records. Number 4, Asteroid City, as Josh did such a good job explaining. Number 3, The Pale Blue Eye. That's with Christian Bale. That also is on Netflix. It's going to be great. Number 2, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, the horror story with our beloved, terrible slasher. Who's actually accompanied by Piglet, by the way. So just in case you want to see Piglet go crazy. Yeah, there you go. Number 1.
Got him, Winnie.
He's going to go hog wild. Number 1, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which is basically one chapter of Bram Stoker's Dracula protracted out into a whole movie by Amblin Entertainment. It's going to be great.
Peter Jackson's jealous.
No doubt. He wishes he would have thought of that first. Okay, so do you want some homework for next week?
My dog ate it.
Well, okay. I guess.
Yes. Homework. What do we have?
Okay. Homework. One of my favorite, and I do mean my favorite, eras of science fiction in movie telling, in movie storytelling, is the 1970s. It is a plethora of all kinds of goodness, dark stuff, ridiculous stuff, real thought-provoking stuff, and then some Soylent Green. Why not? Really good movies, and some are so campy and so cheesy, they still make me happy. But of course, we can't really do just like, popular 1970s movies that are sci-fi because that would be way too easy. So we're going to remove anything that takes place in space or requires space travel. So everything is just here on the good old planet Earth. Aliens invading don't count. Stuff that is sci-fi that is just taking place on Earth. And then the caveat is it has to be a 1970s film. So do you need an example? Would you like an example?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. An excellent example of this genre would be Logan's Run.
Okay.
That would be a really good example. It is 100% here on the good old planet Earth. It doesn't really require any extraterrestrial or alien species in order to propagate the story, and it is most definitely science fiction.
I'm looking at a list of 70s sci-fi films that I've watched. Thank you, Letterboxd, for making me able to get this so quickly. Let's see, thinking. So no space travel? Is that...
No, it takes place on Earth. So 1970s, takes place on Earth, sci-fi movies.
Okay. Hmm.
So, as an example of this, because it takes place on Earth, and maybe it'll make a list, I don't know, but Close Encounters of the Third Kind would definitely be included on this list or within that list parameter because it does take place on Earth, and because we're not the action isn't actually happening off in a galaxy far, far away. But it most certainly is science fiction, and it fits all of the parameters.
7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, from my list, it looks like I have 11. So I should be able to. Yeah, I should have the list. But it also means I'm going to have to check out some more Earth-based sci-fi films from the 70s.
There's some good
between
ones.
now
I mean,
and
there's
next
some
week.
really good ones. And sci-fi is such an interesting genre because it's not just space travel. Sci-fi is so the genre is extremely malleable. There's a lot of things that go into the sci-fi genre, which don't necessarily include aliens and extraterrestrial or space travel, but firmly fit into the sci-fi genre. So I feel like this is going to be an interesting idea to explore. And especially because in the 1970s, let's face it, we were looking at things a lot differently than we are today because number one, we have more technology, but number two, we really have a different base of knowledge to work from. So some things that we thought were possible in the 1970s, we have pretty much completely discounted, but other things are still like this is still a possibility. This could still happen. So I kind
Okay.
of like it. I think this should be an interesting one.
I do too. I look forward to seeing all of the. Wait, I've seen that movie. Why wouldn't it be on my list? So 12. I should. My list is up to 12.
Wow. Okay, well then you will have no problem coming up with the requisite number 10.
Well, you know what I'm gonna do right now, Jen?
Play the credits, roll credits.
Well, normally I would ask you where can people find you on, everything. So first, I'm gonna say,
Oh,
how should I do this? Hey, don't forget, uh, this show is produced in association with Wanko Media and moviesandmeals.com. So check this out.
sweet. That was pretty cool.
So I just realized for our audio listeners, yes, that's a nice song.
It's a great song, and it basically is accompanied by a slideshow of all of the food, recipe, and fun ideas that you can use on your next movie night if you are considering watching a specific movie and need some tasty snacks or a good meal to go with it. So there you go.
Moviesandmeals.com is the place to go. Anything else you want to, throw into the microwave and heat up?
Well, I will say that tomorrow we are going to deep dive and deconstruct everything that is The Witcher over on our next podcast, which is TV Dinners. It's going to be fun because we got a lot of interesting stuff happening with The Witcher and the release just recently of Blood Origin. We're going to talk about what's the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Witcher franchise. So it should be interesting.
Excellent. Anything else?
Uh, I nothing really comes to mind for me. It's the end of the year, and I am about out of words. Like I think I'm actually at my almost max limit. So I should probably stop talking so I have a couple words to say over New Year's, just in case they ask me to provide a toast, because I might need them. So
Well, you might have heard that Webster's has released its recent word of the year, or Merriam-Webster. Yeah. Do you recall what it is?
um let me guess. No, just show me.
Whimsicality. If you're a fan of the show, make sure that you check out the merchandise. Go through the links at wadcomedia.com. In fact, if you want to know anything about the shows that we do here, just go to wadcomedia.com. That's where all the pertinent links are to the Facebook pages, the Twitters, and the YouTubes. It's where all the stuff gets thrown up there. Of course, we're also available wherever fine podcasts are sold. And you know what? I never say this, but don't forget to, hit that like button, smash it, if I'm saying that right, or wherever you're downloading this from. Just rate, review, subscribe. That way, more people can get on board this bandwagon that is the love of your favorite internet list podcast, especially those centered around movies. You don't love anybody more than us. We know it. You know it. It's a relationship that we're all happy to be in. And of course, TV dinners tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m., 5:30 Eastern. It's going to be a lot of fun listening to everybody talk about The Witcher. And I know the new season that's what it is, right? The new season.
Yeah.
It was just released, and so was Henry Cavill. But
yeah, we can talk about that too. Let's talk about that. Okay.
But if you're if you're free on a Friday night, there's always the Wadcast, the Writers, Actors, Director podcast, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, where we talk about all things writing, acting, directing. Sometimes we have a special guest, sometimes we don't, but we never know what we're going to talk about until it's airtime. Yeah, that might, yeah, we should fix that. So what are we going to talk about Friday night? I don't know. Not a psychic. So Brandon and I will figure that out on the lead up. It seems though, every time we have a plan, something happens and then we can't do the plan. So yeah, that's the Wadcast in a nutshell. I don't really have anything else to plug. But for all of you that ordered things like, the limited edition holiday shirts, well, guess what, everybody? I forgot to take them down. So you probably have, a few hours to still grab them while you can, because I don't think I'm going to get to it tonight. But probably in the next 24 hours, they're going to come down. So if you want to order a holiday shirt for next year, feel free. I don't have control over the prices, but sales are frequent over at the merchandise shop. So be sure to check it out when you can. Thank you all for joining us, even you bots that decided that you can help me find love at these websites that you're plugging in our chats. Thank you for dropping in, and thank you for living people for dropping in too. I saw that you're there, but next time say something, say hello, let us know what you feel about our picks, and let us know what your picks are. And I said Pixar.
But I want to know what their picks are actually.
And start leaving comments. Let us know what not only your picks are, but what future lists you would like to see on the show. Because I think that would be fun. Give us both the challenge at the same time. So one of us, I'm sitting on this list. I'm just waiting for the right time to pop it on you.
Like movies with obscure dessert references, or things like that.
Movies where the protagonist has a Gemini birthday, but he behaves like a total Taurus.
Oh, that could be fun.
I don't know how I would do that.
Movies with rampaging wildlife. That's always fun.
Yes. Yeah. Things like that. Stuff. Things like that. Well, again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Jen, for somehow shining a light on a bunch of movies I had no idea existed, even though I did extensive research. So thank you. It's always
You're
a pleasure.
welcome. It was very fun. This was a great list.
And well, we will see you tomorrow for TV dinners and also next week for another exciting list from the 70s of 10 to 1. Say goodnight, Jen.
Good night, Jen.